The photo wasn't meant for me. It was meant for the world. I saw it by accident, if you believe in accidents. It was a Saturday morning in Asheville, one of those warm, syrupy southern mornings where everything feels like it's glowing from the inside out. I had just picked up a bouquet of fresh dahlias from my favorite flower stand and was waiting in line for a lavender oat milk latte when my phone buzzed. It was from Karen, one of the women in my book club. A single line of text. "Is this Rowan?" I opened the message without thinking. What I saw next peeled the air out of my lungs. There, centered in the screenshot, was Rowan, my partner of 12 years, standing barefoot on the balcony of a beach condo holding a woman from behind. She was leaning into him like she belonged there. Like I never existed. She was young, blonde, and practically glowing in the soft coastal sun. The caption said, "Finally free to love out loud, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag he chose me." He was tagged. There was. Public. Celebrated. The affair I didn't know I was living through, now proudly presented like a promotional poster for someone else's rom-com. I stared at the screen for a long time. The coffee line moved forward. Someone bumped my shoulder gently. I didn't feel it. My thumb trembled over the image as if touching it could make it go away. I zoomed in. There was no mistake. The beaded bracelet on his wrist, one I gave him for our 9th anniversary, caught the light just so. Rowan never liked social media. He called it attention-seeking. Apparently he'd had a change of heart. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I smiled politely at the barista, took the coffee I could no longer stomach and walked back to my car. The bouquet of dahlias felt heavier now, like I was carrying a goodbye I hadn't agreed to. My name is Camille Alden and I am 47 years old. I am a licensed trauma therapist, a homeowner, a stepmother in everything but title, and for the past 12 years, I believed I was building a life with a man who loved me. I helped Rowan launch 2 businesses. I co-signed on a commercial lease for his design studio. I turned down a promotion to stay close when his father passed away. And I taught his son Ellis how to tie a tie for prom. Rowan was my family. Until a hashtag told me otherwise. When I got home, our house looked exactly as it had that morning. Sunlight falling across the hardwood floors, a half-burned vanilla candle on the counter, his sneakers kicked off by the door. Normal. Comfortable. Why? The shock didn't wear off, it settled in. I set the coffee down untouched and walked to our bedroom. The bed was still unmade. Rowan claimed he had been sleeping on the pull-out couch the last few weeks because of back issues. I was a therapist. I should have seen it. But love is the one thing even professionals can't practice on themselves. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone again. The post had been up for 4 hours. It had likes, comments, fire emojis. Congratulations. One of them from someone we both knew. My heart should have broken, but something else surfaced instead. Focus. I had built my life on truth. On patience. On the kind of love that shows up quietly every day. I wasn't about to be cast as the oblivious ex in someone else's love story. No. If Rowan wanted a clean slate, he was going to learn that burning bridges leaves ashes behind. And I knew exactly how to rise from them. That post was the beginning of the end. But also the beginning of something else. Not grief. Not vengeance. Control. Rowan came home late that night. I was already in bed, back turned to the door, pretending to be asleep. I heard the lock click, his keys drop into the ceramic bowl on the console table. He moved like someone trying too hard not to wake anyone. The smell of ocean salt and coconut sunscreen trailed in behind him. He didn't speak. He didn't kiss my forehead like he used to. He didn't even peek in to see if I was still awake. Just a faint rustling in the closet, probably swapping out his weekend bag for something less obvious. Then the soft thunk of the couch cushions as he settled into his lie. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. I had no idea how long it had been going on. But I knew exactly what I was going to do next. People underestimate therapists. They think we're all softness and empathy, that we cry during rom-coms and hand out tea and tissues like it's a personality trait. What they forget is that we listen professionally. We observe. We document. And we rarely forget anything. The next morning, I texted Rowan to ask if he could pick up Ellis from soccer practice. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and a love you, like nothing had changed. Interesting. He still wanted to keep up appearances. Which meant he didn't know I knew. Which meant I had time. While he was gone, I opened our shared laptop. I wasn't sure what I'd find. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But when someone decides to blow up your life, you learn quickly what questions to ask. Emails. Deleted ones first. There they were. 2 weeks ago, a message confirming a reservation at the Azure, a luxury resort 2 hours south on the coast. The sender? A woman named Kinsley Duran. So she had a name. A bold one. The email thread revealed dinner plans, a couple's massage, and a note from Kinsley that made my skin crawl. Can't wait to wake up next to you every morning like we always talked about. I took screenshots. I archived everything. Then I opened our banking app. I had always let Rowan handle the cards. It made him feel capable, masculine, in control, whatever performance he needed to keep up. But I had always kept a separate account. From before him. That had been my one act of quiet rebellion. Now it was my lifeline. Scrolling through transactions, I found them quickly. $500 to the Azure, $742 to something labeled Easier Jewelry, $230 at a boutique I'd never heard of. None of these had shown up in our shared monthly budget review, which meant he had another card. Or worse, another account. I clicked into our joint savings. It was lower than I remembered. A full $9,300 lower. I opened a spreadsheet and started building a timeline. At 3:15 p.m. I called a lawyer. Not a friend of a friend or someone I'd used once for a lease. I called Marianne Morrow, one of the sharpest, most feared divorce attorneys in North Carolina. I had her card from years ago when a client had begged me to call her after escaping a toxic marriage. I never thought I'd be the one making that call. Marianne answered on the second ring. This is Morrow. I liked her immediately. I explained the situation, briefly. She asked 3 questions. Are you legally married? Is he legally tied to your assets? Do you want this to end quietly or do you want to walk away clean? I answered yes, and I want to walk away smart. She scheduled a meeting for Wednesday. Told me to bring every document I could gather. Told me not to confront him until we'd spoken. And then, almost like an afterthought, she added, Camille, no matter how angry you get, don't tip your hand too early. Men like him bank on your silence. Don't give him what he expects. I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen. Tired. Angry. Sharpening. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry on the kitchen floor. I wasn't going to key his car or throw his clothes onto the lawn. I was going to become the woman he forgot I could be. Marianne's office wasn't what I expected. No downtown high-rise. No cold glass table or minimalist decor. It was a converted craftsman house nestled behind an overgrown crepe myrtle, with a wraparound porch and wind chimes whispering in the breeze. I almost laughed when I saw it. Of course, the most cutthroat divorce lawyer in the region worked from a place that looked like your aunt's lake house. Inside, however, the energy shifted. The walls were lined with law books and case files stacked with military precision. A subtle scent of leather and coffee lingered in the air. It was warm but serious. Like her. Marianne Morrow stood when I entered. Early 50s, cropped silver hair, crisp white blouse tucked into tailored trousers. No makeup except for red lipstick so bold it felt like a statement. She didn't shake my hand. She looked me in the eye. I don't do pity, she said. Only plans. Is that what you want? Yes, I said. Plans. She nodded once and gestured toward a chair. I opened the folder I'd brought. Bank statements, credit card summaries, screenshots, a printout of the Instagram story. I'd even included a notarized copy of our shared lease and the business cosign papers. Marianne scanned each page without comment. After a while, she leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs and said, He's clever. But not clever enough. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He's been siphoning money, I said, quietly. Almost surgically. Marianne pointed to one of the statements. Not quietly enough. You caught it. That's leverage. She pulled out a legal pad and began sketching out timelines. Accounts. Legal angles. Asset vulnerabilities. Her pen moved with the kind of confidence that made me feel safe and slightly dangerous all at once. Then she paused. Tell me about the business, she said. It's a small design firm. Mostly residential interiors. I helped set it up. Co-signed on the lease. Paid the first 6 months' rent from my personal account when his first client backed out. She looked up sharply. Did you sign anything that made you a legal partner? No. Good. That means you're not liable. He's operating solo, but you've got the paper trail that shows financial contribution. That's equity, even if informal. I felt a flicker of something in my chest. Power maybe. The kind you forget is yours when you've spent too many years shrinking to make someone else feel tall. And the condo in Asheville? She asked. You said he mentioned buying? He's been browsing listings. I found emails from a realtor. Nothing's been purchased yet. Marianne smirked. Because he doesn't have the funds. He's trying to build a new life on your dime. That's not uncommon. She looked back down at the documents. You're not legally married, she said. But there's still plenty we can do. North Carolina doesn't recognize common law marriage, but when there's cohabitation, financial entanglement, and evidence of dependency, courts will listen. Especially when fraud is involved. I blinked. Fraud. Marianne set down her pen. If he used your money under the pretense of partnership, while secretly making plans to leave you, that's misrepresentation of intent. He may not go to jail for it, but he's going to bleed for it. That night I couldn't sleep. Rowan was in the other room, snoring softly on the couch like a man without a care in the world. I stared at the ceiling fan and counted each slow rotation. I thought about all the dinners I'd cooked while he worked late. All the times I'd told myself we were just in a rough patch. The nights I fell asleep alone, convincing myself that emotional distance was normal after a decade together. But distance wasn't the issue. Deception was. At 2:13 a.m. I got out of bed, opened my laptop, and started a new document titled, The Exit Plan. I outlined everything. Accounts to close. Documents to secure. Texts and emails to archive. Key contacts to notify. Lease options for a temporary workspace. I wasn't just walking away. I was walking forward. Rowan had no idea. He still kissed my cheek absent-mindedly in the mornings and called me babe without hesitation. Maybe he was that arrogant. Or maybe he believed the version of me he'd slowly sculpted over the years. The one who stayed quiet, smoothed over rough edges, made everything easier. He didn't realize she was gone. I didn't cry that night. I didn't rage. I just planned. The calm before the storm isn't silence. It's structure. Rowan started to notice things. Not big things, not yet. But small, almost imperceptible changes that made him pause. I stopped reminding him to pay the power bill. I didn't ask about his meetings anymore. I let conversations trail off into silence, where I once would have filled the gaps with warmth, reassurance, or logistical support. He'd ask, "Everything okay?" And I'd smile and say, "Of course." What I didn't say was that I'd moved all my recurring payments out of our joint account. That I'd rerouted my freelance income into my personal account. That I'd quietly opened a P.O. box and a separate phone line under my business name, Alden Insight and Advisory. He'd ask if I wanted to go out for dinner and I'd say I had a client session. He didn't question it. He was too distracted. Every now and then I'd catch him staring into his phone with that sheepish little smile he used to reserve for me. And once while I was folding laundry I heard him whisper, "I can't wait to see you again." I never asked to. I didn't need to. I just folded his favorite flannel shirt and added it to the suitcase I was packing for him in the back of the guest room closet. One morning I left early for a walk just after sunrise. I needed to clear my head before my next call with Marianne. The sidewalks were still damp with dew and the town was just beginning to stir. Bakeries prepping croissants. Coffee shops hissing steam. And that's when I saw her. Across the street, standing in front of a real estate office. Kinsley. I recognized her immediately. Not just from the photo, but from the way Rowan looked at her in it. There's a kind of intimacy you can't fake. She was inside, flipping through a folder with one of the agents. Tall, effortless, deeply tanned. Probably early 30s, though her face had that expensive glow that made it hard to tell. I crossed the street. Not to confront her. To observe. I slipped into the cafe next door, ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. She didn't see me. She was pointing at a photo of a property, nodding. The agent was animated, flipping through listings like she was on a deadline. Kinsley looked impatient. Good. Impatience leads to mistakes. I snapped a photo through the glass and sent it to Marianne with a short message. Same woman from IG post. Active property search. Confirming timeline. 2 hours later Marianne replied. Thanks. She's listed as secondary on a rental application Rowan submitted last month. No financials yet. Keep eyes open. I was ahead of him. Every step of the way. That night Rowan suggested a trip. Just a weekend, he said, trying to sound casual. We haven't had alone time in a while. I tilted my head, smiled. Where were you thinking? He hesitated. Maybe the coast? Of course. His turf. Her territory. I said, let me check my schedule. He looked relieved. Which told me everything. After he left the room, I opened my laptop and added 2 things to the exit plan. Coastal property search, flag for future subpoenas. Begin digital backup of all text records. My heart was still. My hands steady. The power wasn't in catching him. It was in letting him think he was safe. In watching him build his new life on foundations that were already cracking beneath him. I didn't need to rip the rug out. I was going to let him dance on it until it disappeared beneath his feet. And when it did, I would be standing. It started with a question I already knew the answer to. We were having dinner at home. Something light, something ordinary. Grilled salmon. Roasted asparagus. A glass of white wine I didn't feel like drinking. Rowan had his laptop open beside his plate, half listening as he clicked through emails. I watched the way his fingers hovered over the trackpad. He was distracted but trying to appear invested. I knew the signs. So I asked casually, almost playfully. Hey, did you ever end up making that deposit into our joint savings? The one we talked about for the renovation fund. He blinked. Looked up slowly. Then smiled too quickly. Oh. Yeah, I did that a couple weeks ago. Didn't I mention it? I tilted my head, feigned confusion. Weird. I didn't see it. He chuckled, reaching for his glass. Maybe it was delayed. Bank stuff's been glitchy lately. I nodded slowly. Huh. I'll take another look. That was it. That's all I said. But I saw it. The flicker behind his eyes. The pause before the sip. The faint tension in his jaw as he turned his attention back to the screen. He thought he was being tested, but he couldn't figure out how much I knew. Perfect. The next morning he left for the studio early. Said he had a client consult. He didn't kiss my cheek. Didn't text me later. He was slipping. By noon I was sitting in Marianne's office again, going over preliminary documents. She handed me a thick folder, clipped and color-coded. Affidavits. Summary of transactions. Preliminary asset breakdown. Once we serve him, this becomes the discovery file. I ran my fingers over the cover. It felt heavier than it looked. What happens if he tries to hide anything? I asked. Marianne smiled without warmth. Then we make an example out of him. I left her office with a flash drive, a notarized statement, and the ghost of a woman I used to be tugging at the back of my ribs. The one who would have tried to talk this through. Who would have asked Rowan for honesty. Who would have accepted half-truths if they were spoken gently enough. I didn't recognize her anymore. That evening I did something small, but deliberate. I set a manila envelope on the kitchen counter before Rowan got home. Inside was a single page, one of the flagged statements from our joint account, circled in red. Nothing else. No note. No accusation. Just the number. Just the transfer. Just enough. He saw it after dinner. I was wiping down the counters when he picked it up. He didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then, what's this? I shrugged. You tell me. His eyes searched my face, trying to gauge the tone. The temperature. The threat. Oh, I must have forgotten to log that one, he said. I'll check it out tomorrow. I dried my hands. Looked him in the eye. I already did. He didn't respond. Just nodded and left the envelope on the counter like it might bite him if he touched it again. That night I didn't hear him get into bed. He stayed on the couch. Good. Let him stew. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need shouting. I just needed doubt to settle in his mind like a fog. Let him wonder what I knew. Let him question how long I'd been watching. Let him sweat. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was a warning shot. A sliver of the truth, sharp enough to sting, but not enough to bleed. He still had no idea just how far this would go. And I wasn't going to tell him. I was going to show him. The first time I saw Rowan panic in public, it was over brunch. We were at the Ledger, one of those new Southern fusion places with artisanal everything and overpriced mimosas. The kind of spot he used to say was too try hard, but that he suddenly loved now that Kinsley posted about them every weekend. He had suggested it oddly enough. Said we hadn't done anything normal together in weeks. He meant, he wanted to keep up appearances. He didn't know appearances were already unraveling. I agreed to go. I wore a pale linen blouse and simple gold hoops. Understated, put together, quiet armor. Rowan noticed. You look nice, he said. I smiled. Thank you. He didn't ask what I meant when I said I'd invited someone to join us. Just assumed it was a friend. Just assumed he was still the one directing the scene. That's how narcissists operate, with the quiet confidence of someone who thinks everyone else is still clapping when the curtain's already dropped. 10 minutes in, Talia arrived. She was a client-turned-friend. She also happened to be a respected CPA and Marianne's go-to forensic accountant. She slid into the booth beside me, greeted Rowan warmly, and ordered a Bloody Mary like this was brunch with old friends. Rowan didn't recognize her. Of course he didn't. They exchanged pleasantries. I watched him try to perform. Charming, witty, generous. He still thought this was a scene he could control. Then Talia pulled out a small envelope from her purse, placed it gently on the table beside my water glass and said, I brought those documents you asked for, Camille. Rowan glanced down at it. One word was printed in small, neat font. Summary. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I just smiled and slid it back into my bag. The server arrived. We ordered. Small talk resumed. But Rowan had stopped eating. His jaw was tight. His fingers drummed against the glass. Twice he checked his phone. By the time the check came, he looked pale. On the walk back to the car, he finally broke. What was that? He asked, trying to sound casual. Your new accountant? I didn't look at him. She's helping with some transition planning, I said. He stopped walking. What kind of transition? I turned to face him. Held his gaze. The kind where I stopped paying for things I didn't agree to. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence between us bloomed wide and electric. Camille, he said carefully, what's going on? I stepped closer, voice low. I think you already know. And then I got into the car and left him standing there on the sidewalk, staring after me like he didn't recognize me anymore. That evening, the first Real crack appeared in his polished veneer. I came home to find Rowan sitting at the dining table with his laptop open and 3 manila folders scattered in front of him. He looked up as I entered, eyes wide with something he rarely wore: uncertainty. You've been talking to someone, he said. I said nothing. I checked the accounts, he added. You moved money. Closed some things. Why? So I said nothing. He stood desperate now. Camille, talk to me. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. Took a slow sip. Let the silence stretch until it trembled. Then I turned, leaned against the counter and said simply, you should probably talk to a lawyer. Rowan's face fell. It wasn't just the words. It was the calm. The way I didn't yell. The way I didn't cry. That's what unnerved him. He knew how to argue. He didn't know how to beg. The next morning he didn't go to the studio. Didn't leave the couch. Just sat there staring at his phone. By lunchtime he had texted Kinsley 12 times. By evening I had deleted my location from our shared apps, changed every password, and booked a private consultation room at a downtown co-working space. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. And he finally knew it. Rowan tried to fight smoke with mirrors. That's how men like him handle pressure, by deflecting. Reframing. Pretending the fire isn't burning until the walls fall down around them. 2 days after our brunch with Talia, he began what I call the flurry phase. Suddenly he was everywhere. Cooking breakfast. Sending me old playlists. Cleaning out the garage like it meant something. He even lit a candle in the hallway bathroom, the one he used to call pointless. The citrus and sage kind I always liked. At first I said nothing. But when I walked into the living room and saw flowers, I almost laughed. Peonies. A large, showy bouquet. Expensive too. The tag from the florist was still attached. I plucked the card out of the stems. Read. Let's start fresh. R. I set the flowers down on the table without a word. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the most recent property listing Marianne's office had flagged, and quietly sent it to myself. A condo in Wilmington, listed under Rowan Caldwell and Kinsley Duran. Application pending. No co-signer yet. Interesting. So he was still hedging his bets. Still assuming I didn't know everything. The next morning I served him. I didn't do it with fanfare. I didn't stand over him like a movie villain. I just placed the envelope next to his morning coffee before I left the house. Inside, a formal notice of intent to separate. A financial audit summary compiled by Talia. A personal letter handwritten in black ink. Just 2 paragraphs long. Read. I know everything. And I forgive none of it. That was all. When I returned later that day, Rowan was pacing in the backyard with his phone pressed to his ear. I watched from the window. He wasn't yelling, not yet, but his posture had shifted. No longer confident. Coiled. Frantic. He came inside with the envelope crumpled in his fist. What is this? He demanded, voice low but shaking. Some kind of threat? I met his eyes. It's a beginning. He blinked. A beginning of what? Accountability, I said. He threw the envelope onto the counter. You've been planning this. I raised an eyebrow. And you haven't? That shut him up. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Not like strangers. Like people who had finally stopped pretending. You're being dramatic, he said finally. This isn't who you are. No, I said calmly. It's who you never thought I'd be. He laughed, but it was hollow. You're going to blow up our life over a few mistakes? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I crossed the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. You didn't make a mistake, Rowan. You made a choice. And now I'm making mine. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You're not thinking clearly. But I was. Clearer than I'd been in years. He tried again that night. Knocked on my door. Asked if we could talk. Said things could still be fixed. I let him speak. Let him flail. Let him spin the story. Then I handed him a second envelope. This one contained the bank records. The flagged transactions. A notarized letter from Marianne stating our intent to pursue recovery of funds used for non-disclosed expenses. You'll want your own lawyer, I said. He didn't respond. The next morning he was gone. I found the guest room empty. The suitcase gone. A single post-it note left behind on the nightstand. I didn't think you'd actually do it. That was the first honest thing he'd said to me in weeks. The house felt quieter after Rowan left. Not peaceful. Not yet. But hollow in that way a space does after someone exits without grace. The air still carried his cologne. The doormat still had his boot print. The mirror in the hallway still fogged from his last rushed shower. But the silence, that belonged to me now. I opened all the windows. Lit candles. Played Ella Fitzgerald on the old record player Rowan used to hate. I filled the space not with noise but with intention. And then I went to work. In the span of 4 days I filed 3 formal requests. A freeze on all joint liquid assets. A lien inquiry on the design studio lease I'd co-signed. A petition to initiate recovery of unauthorized expenditures. Marianne's office moved swiftly. Talia provided every line item of misuse, documented, labeled, time-stamped. It was all surgical, cold but clean. I didn't send threats. I sent facts. And that's what finally drew Kinsley out of the shadows. It was a Thursday afternoon when she called. I was sitting at the small rented desk in my co-working space, reviewing a draft of the business proposal for my upcoming consultancy launch. I recognized the area code first. Then the name. Kinsley Duran. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. On the third call I picked up. Her voice was smoother than I expected. Measured. Oh. Hi. Camille. I said nothing. This is awkward, I know. But I was hoping we could talk. Woman to woman. I let the silence stretch. I wanted to hear what shape she gave her guilt. Finny. She went on. I'm not trying to cause problems. Rowan told me you were handling things. That you'd moved on. I didn't know he used your accounts. I didn't know until last night. He said he was taking care of it. I smiled. Cold and invisible. And what did he tell you? I asked. About the business lease I co-signed. About the savings account he emptied while shopping for your beach condo? Did he mention the part where he forged my signature on the credit transfer? Kinsley hesitated. No. He didn't. Of course he didn't. I could hear her breathing. Fast now. The sound of someone realizing the story she bought came without a refund policy. I didn't sign up for this, she said. I didn't sign up to be the other woman in a lawsuit. I almost laughed. No, I said. You signed up to be the next chapter. You just didn't check who wrote the prologue. She didn't respond. So I finished it for her. You should call your realtor, I said. That condo he promised you? You won't be able to close on it. He has no legal access to that account anymore. Kinsley exhaled sharply like I'd kicked the air out of her. I thought he loved me. He might have, I said. But not more than he loved what I gave him. And then I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt still. Men like Rowan rewrite history. Women like Kinsley believe they're the exception. And women like me, we learn to stop playing in stories someone else is writing. That night I made the final call I'd been putting off. Hey, I said when Ellis picked up. He was Rowan's son, but he'd always been mine in the ways that mattered. I hadn't told him yet. I hadn't wanted to break something soft in him just because something hard had broken in me. But he deserved the truth. You okay? He asked. He sounded tired. Tentative. Getting there, I said. Can we meet soon? Yeah. Please. We set a time. Saturday. Just the two of us. No pretenses. I looked around the house after I hung up. It was still ours. But soon it would be mine. Not because I took it, but because I stayed when someone else chose to leave. And when I finally locked the front door for the night, it didn't feel like I was keeping anyone out. It felt like I was letting something go. We met at a small diner near the university. The kind with 2 bright lights and scuffed booths, where the waitress knows your name and pours coffee before you ask. It was just after 10 on a Saturday. Quiet enough to talk. Neutral ground. Ellis walked in wearing a hoodie I bought him 3 Christmases ago. His hair was longer now, his face thinner. Adulthood looked good on him, but it also looked heavy. Like he'd seen more than he was ready for. He spotted me right away and gave a small wave. That same shy half-smile he's had since he was 14. Hey Camille. Hi sweetheart. We hugged. A little stiff at first, then warmer. He smelled like laundry detergent and anxiety. We slid into a booth near the back. The waitress brought 2 menus and 2 waters. I ordered tea. He didn't order anything at all. He waited. I waited longer. Finally he broke. Dad said you were mad. I looked at him for a long moment. I'm not mad, Ellis, I said. I'm disappointed. And sad. And tired. But no, I'm not mad. He stared at the table, twisting a paper napkin into knots. He also said you'd planned this whole thing behind his back. That you've been trying to hurt him. I nodded slowly. That sounds like your father. So it's not true? I took a breath. I planned to protect myself, yes. Because your father made choices that put my future at risk without telling me. That's not a fight. That's survival. Ellis didn't respond right away. I let him sit in the silence. I knew better than to fill it. He told me you were being vindictive, he said eventually. That you froze everything just to punish him. I laughed. Stiffly. Sadly. I froze our joint assets because he emptied half of them to pay for a condo I didn't know about, with a woman I didn't know he loved. I wasn't punishing him. I was stopping the bleeding. His hands clenched. Not in anger. More like confusion. Grief. He said it was complicated. Of course he did. Ellis finally looked up. His eyes were so much like Rowan's, same shape, same color. But without the guard behind them. You always told me to ask hard questions, he said. So here's one. I waited. Is any of it real? He asked. The way you took care of us? Me. Was that just because of Dad? My throat tightened. No, I said. That was the only real part. He blinked fast. Swallowed hard. You were there more than he ever was. And I meant every bit of it. We sat in silence again. This one was heavier. Not empty, just full of things neither of us had words for yet. He finally picked up his glass and drank half of it in one go. Then said without looking at me, I haven't spoken to him since he left. You don't have to choose sides, Ellis. I know. But we both knew he already had. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You're not responsible for his choices. I feel like I should have seen it, he said. How do you live with someone for years and not know who they are? I smiled gently. That's not your burden. That's the cost of loving someone who hides. He nodded. Fully. Then leaned back in the booth and finally exhaled. We talked for another hour. Not about Rowan, not really. About his classes. His new internship. A girl he wasn't sure liked him back. Life. Small things that felt suddenly enormous. And when we left, he hugged me again. Longer this time. Firmer. "I'm glad we talked," he said. "I needed to hear it from you." "I'll always be someone you can call," I said. "That hasn't changed." He smiled, then turned and walked back to his car. And I stood there for a moment longer, the sun warming my shoulders, my chest light and aching at the same time. He may have inherited his face from Rowan. But the rest? He got from me. Kinsley was gone within a week. She moved out of the condo she and Rowan had barely begun furnishing, took what little furniture she'd brought in, packed it into a borrowed SUV, and left behind nothing but a set of copper pans and a handwritten note taped to the fridge. "This isn't what you promised." Marianne forwarded me a photo of the note. The property manager had sent it to her, along with confirmation that the lease was now in Rowan's name only, and overdue. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But I did feel something like closure, cool and clean and final. The condo was just one of the promises Rowan had made. The others were unraveling too. The studio he'd launched 2 years earlier? 2 of his 3 contractors had stopped showing up. Word had gotten around. Apparently, a man with frozen accounts and pending legal action wasn't the most stable employer. The worst part, for Rowan at least, was that none of it came crashing down in flames. There was no spectacular explosion. No dramatic public meltdown. Just a slow, methodical erosion. The kind you don't notice until the floor's already given way beneath you. I didn't chase him. I didn't correct the rumors he tried to spread. Let him talk. Every attempt to portray himself as the victim just made him look smaller. We'd been together for 12 years. People knew me. They trusted me. His version didn't hold up under scrutiny. And besides, I had better things to do. I had finally launched Alden Advisory, a boutique consultancy for women navigating major transitions. Divorce. Career pivots. Financial trauma. My first 3 clients came from referrals, then 3 more from those. Word was spreading. I rented a small brick office space with tall windows and a creaky front door. There were fresh flowers on my desk. Not from Rowan. Not from anyone. From me. On the day I signed the lease, I brought a bottle of champagne and drank 1 glass by myself after hours. I stood in the middle of the empty space and let myself feel everything at once. Relief, pride, grief, peace. Rowan had taken pieces of me for years. Quietly. Subtly. Like erosion. But now I was building something new from the solid ground I'd fought to reclaim. 2 days later, I received an email from Kinsley. It was short. Blunt. "Camille, I wanted to apologize. For everything. I believed what he told me and I shouldn't have. If I'd known the full story, I never would have. Well, I hope you're doing better now. I think I finally am. KD." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. But because there was nothing left to say. Kinsley was a chapter. One I didn't write, but one I had to live through. And now, like so many other things, she belonged to the past. That weekend, I stood in the backyard of my house. My house, pruning the lavender bush Rowan had once called a waste of space. It had overgrown wildly this summer, stubborn and fragrant. I liked it better this way. At some point, I looked up and noticed a figure near the side gate. Rowan. He was thinner now. Tired. Standing with his hands in his pockets like a man unsure whether he was invited or trespassing. "Camille," he said softly. I wiped my hands on a towel. Said nothing. He paused. "I wanted to see how you were." I nodded toward the house. Still standing. He tried to smile. Failed. "She left," he said after a moment. "I know. She said she didn't sign up for all the chaos." "That makes 2 of you." He looked down at his shoes. Then back up, eyes filled with something that might have been regret, or might have just been inconvenience. "I miss what we had," he said. I shook my head gently. "No, Rowan. You miss the version of me that made your life easy." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to defend. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I don't need you to expect it," I replied. "I just need you to live with what you did." He nodded slowly. Took a step back. "I hope you find someone who—" "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't hope anything for me. Just leave me be." And he did. No dramatic monologue. No plea for redemption. Just the quiet realization that this time, there was no way back in. Not because I slammed the door, but because I had outgrown the house he tried to keep me in. It was raining the morning of the hearing. The kind of soft, persistent rain that makes everything feel clean and inevitable. I wore a navy suit. Minimal makeup. Small pearl earrings Rowan's mother had given me years ago. The ones she once said made me look like the woman behind every powerful man. Funny. Now I wore them to remind myself I was never behind him at all. The courthouse was quiet, aside from the shuffling of papers and the occasional cough from a nervous intern. Marianne met me at the entrance holding a thick folder and a coffee. "No surprises," she said. "He's trying to settle. Desperation's finally catching up to his ego." I nodded. "Let's finish this." Rowan arrived 5 minutes before we were called in. Alone. No lawyer, not anymore. He'd fired the first one, couldn't afford a second. He looked smaller somehow. Deflated. I felt no joy in that. Just closure. The judge was efficient. She reviewed the financial documentation, the statements, the business filings, and the summary of misused joint funds. When she asked Rowan if he had any objections, he didn't speak. He just shook his head. And that was it. The house stayed mine. The business debts tied to my name were dissolved. He was ordered to repay a portion of the funds he'd funneled for the condo, plus legal fees. Not because of malice, but because of math. There was no scene. No gasps. No last-minute theatrics. Just a signature. A final stamp. A final breath I didn't know I'd been holding. As we stepped into the hallway, Rowan followed me. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. I turned. Met his gaze without flinching. "You didn't mean not to." His mouth opened. Then closed. He nodded, slowly, like someone finally understanding that remorse doesn't cancel impact. "You're not the woman I thought you were," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm the woman you thought would stay quiet." And then I walked away. No backward glance. No dramatic exit. Just steps. Measured, steady, into a life I had already begun building without him. That night I walked through my house alone. Touched the backs of chairs. Smelled the lavender I'd cut from the garden. Opened the windows even though the air was cool. And I stood there letting it all in. Not grief. Not even triumph. Just freedom. It didn't feel loud or cinematic. It felt like peace. I poured myself a glass of wine and wrote a single sentence in my journal before bed. He doesn't own the story anymore. 6 months after the final hearing, I opened the doors to my new office space for the first time. A real office. Not a sublease. Not a shared corner table in a co-working hub. The front window bore the name. Alden Advisory. Financial guidance for women in transition. It was clean. Quiet. Elegant. Not flashy. Just honest. My desk faced a window that looked out over the historic district. I'd kept it minimal. White oak, brass lamp, 2 chairs for clients. There were soft rugs, warm light, and books on the shelves that had helped me survive the hardest season of my life. And beside the framed diploma on the wall, a photo of Amelia and me on her graduation day. She'd been visiting more often now. Calling to check in. Sending articles, laughing over FaceTime. The anger she once had over my silence during the fallout had softened into something else. Respect. Understanding. A bond between women who now knew exactly how hard it was to hold your world together quietly. One afternoon she came by with a latte and a crooked smile. "I saw Dad last weekend," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "And?" "He's working at some boutique firm in Charlotte. Said he's getting his footing again. Tried to ask about you." "What did you say?" He shrugged. "Told him you're too busy building something that matters." I smiled. "He looked older," she added after a moment. "Like someone still trying to figure out what he lost." "He never understood what he had," I said. That weekend I hosted a small dinner at home. Just a few close friends. Ellis came too. He brought a bottle of wine and a girl he'd started seeing, a sharp-eyed engineering student who challenged everything he said with a grin. He looked happy. I watched them laugh in the kitchen while I chopped herbs. The sound was easy. Unforced. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the backyard. The garden lights glowed softly in the dark. The air smelled like rosemary and fresh rain. There were no echoes of Rowan anymore. No memories clinging to corners. No bitterness buried in the wood grain. Just space. And silence. And breath. And me. Not as someone's partner. Not as a fallback. Not as the woman behind the man. As Camille Alden. Business owner. Mother. Manner. Woman who didn't flinch when the world shifted beneath her. She simply changed her footing. The revenge I'd once fantasized about didn't look like flames or headlines or downfall. It looked like peace. Success. A name on the door that no one could take from me. And in the stillness of that final summer night, I realized something I hadn't dared believe 6 months earlier. This wasn't a recovery. It was a beginning. And I was ready for all of it.